Nearly 4 years ago, Hyundai introduced the Kona. It was a feisty little subcompact SUV that was an instant hit for the company because it had a spunky 1.6-liter turbo engine, it had an attractive, rugged, almost Jeep-like design, and it was one of the most affordable of the subcompact SUVs. As you guys know, this segment continues to grow in popularity. So for 2022, Hyundai has made some pretty extensive changes to the Kona family in order to keep it in check with all of the newer competition. As you can see this week, Hyundai has loaned me the fully loaded Kona Limited with the 1.6-liter turbo engine. Now, I've already had a chance to show you guys my full review on the new high-performance variant. However, for those of you who are looking for a slightly more subtle Kona, how does the refreshed 2022 model stack up? Stay tuned to find out. So before we talk about the exterior styling changes, I want to remind you what's powering a regular Kona, because as you guys know, all of the news is on the Kona N, which has a 2-liter turbo engine from the Veloster N and the Elantra N. However, for those of you who don't need quite that much power, you're going to find plenty to like under the hood of the restyled Kona. Now, the regular Kona continues to offer a choice between a naturally aspirated 2-liter engine and this 1.6-liter turbocharged gasoline direct injection 4-cylinder. It's been upgraded this year with an extra 20 horsepower. That's right, this now makes 195 horsepower and 195 pound-feet of torque. It all goes out through a 7-speed dual-clutch transmission. It's the company's EcoShift dual-clutch transmission, so one less gear versus the Kona N. However, if you guys go for the base engine, it's going to have a CVT, which replaces the old 6-speed automatic. Unlike the N, this is available with either front-wheel drive or the company's all-wheel drive system, which has a torque vectoring availability. This one here is all-wheel drive. With all-wheel drive, it's rated at 27 in the city, 32 on the highway. Regular gas is recommended. You don't have to put premium in this vehicle. And Hyundai says the curb weight of this car is roughly around 3,300 pounds. I don't believe this vehicle is recommended to tow. It is a very, very small SUV, if you can even call it that. 0 to 60 performance, Hyundai doesn't quote that, but since we have our testing equipment, we'll go ahead and try this out when we get it out on the road. Now, closing the hood, let's go ahead and talk about the styling, because this vehicle, I said subtle in the introduction. Subtle is a relative term. However, Hyundai did, I think, soften the styling for 2022. In fact, I think the refreshed look looks good on the Kona N, but on the regular Hyundai Kona, I don't particularly think the styling looks quite as distinctive. As you can see, this particular one here is the Limited, painted in Thunder Gray. It's got some premium gray plastic cladding all over the vehicle, which almost looks like it's the same color as the actual paint until you look up close. You can see it's not actually painted. The grille has been completely tweaked. It's been widened. It's been kind of slimmed down. Same thing with the headlights. They've also been kind of widened and slimmed down a little bit. You can see this Limited includes full LED low and high beams, which are available on the N line. If you guys go for a base S or an SE, those come with halogens. You can see above the headlight is the LED daytime running light and turn signal. At least it is an LED. It's divorced from the actual headlight module. No fog lights on this vehicle, but you can see there are some functional air vents there, some functional vents for the grille, because the engine's going to need that air for the intercooler. And then you can see down here is the radar sensor for the adaptive cruise control, along with the forward-facing camera in the windshield. Overall, let me know what you guys think of the look. What I don't particularly love is the fact that the Hyundai logo moved from the grille to up here. I think it actually looked better in the grille position versus in the upper position. But overall, I think that the car still has an attractive quality, but I just personally prefer the pre-refreshed model. That's my own personal taste. Now, moving on the side profile, this vehicle is built off of the Accents profile, the Accents platform, I believe, which is why if you guys go for a front-wheel drive model, they will have a twist beam independent, semi-independent rear. This all-wheel drive version has a 4-wheel independent suspension, and it's a small car. This vehicle essentially is around 165.6 inches long. It's a good, like, 10 inches shorter than something like the Subaru Crosstrek, and even 6 inches shorter than the Kia Seltos, which is this car's platform mate. It has a 102.3-inch long wheelbase, so again, very diminutive size. And if you look at the ground clearance, this is supposed to be an SUV, but Hyundai says there's only 6.7 inches of ground clearance, so you're not going to be going off-roading anywhere in a vehicle like this. You can see lots of gray cladding, which looks good with the Thunder Gray paint. You can see the wheels. These are the upgraded 18-inch wheels with 235/45 R18 tires that you get on the Limited. There's also a new N-line trim that gives you a much more aggressive looking wheel. I personally think the N-line is the one I would go with, and you also get body colored cladding as opposed to the gray accents on this particular model here. Now looking at the roof rails, you can see they are kind of like the same gray painted, premium gray cladding that you find on the rear, on the front fascia. You can see the sunroof is standard on the Limited. It's just a standard sunroof. There is an LED turn signal indicator on the mirrors, but again, everything here just looks pretty subtle. It's a really attractive looking SUV that reminds me a little bit more like a hatchback as opposed to a crossover. Now looking at the rear, you can see the Limited includes standard full LED taillights. The turn signal is also LED. You have a reverse light down there. The LED taillights also look pretty good. The lower trims will just have an incandescent design. You can see there are a fairly good amount of badging there. There's a Kona badge, there's a 1.6T all-wheel drive badge to let everyone know you got all-wheel drive. And then if you go for the N-line, you'll have an exposed exhaust tip. This Limited decides to go with a subtler look. Now, because this is a subcompact SUV, a power tailgate isn't available. Now, that is something that you can get on some competitors like the Mazda CX-30, but you can see cargo space is down compared to the competition because of how small this vehicle is. At around 19.3 cubic feet of space, this is really small. There is a little bit of underfloor storage over here, and then there's also a temporary spare tire, so you don't have to deal with a fix-a-flock kit. If you fold down the rear seats, it expands it out to just under 46 cubic feet of space, which is fine, but you are going to find more from something like the Kia Seltos or the Subaru Crosstrek. So clearly Hyundai made a lot of changes to the exterior styling of the Kona this year, but what about the inside? Now, before we jump into the interior, I want to show you guys the key fob. You can see this Limited includes their smart key access system. This is Hyundai's older key. It does include remote start on the fob, so you just push and hold this button right here. You can hear the vehicle will start right up. You can also access it through the Hyundai Blue Link app, where you can also use a digital key. Your phone is a key, although I don't believe it works on iPhone right now, only on Android devices. The vehicle itself, you can see as you approach the car, has a very traditional look with the door handles. You can see there's a sensor on the back of the door handle that locks it. If you unlock it, you just put your hand on the back of the door handle and that will unlock the door for you. Now you can see my tester is pretty subtle in the color palette. It's got a gray exterior with the gray leather interior on the inside. Now I do like how it's like a light gray. This light gray certainly looks good. The seats have perforated leather on them. No contrasting stitching. These are heated seats with an 8-way power driver seat with a 2-way lumbar adjustment, which is nice. No memory seats, wasn't expecting that in this segment. Also no ventilated seats, which is something that you typically don't find in this segment either. Now materials, you can see this is on the lower end of the totem pole for Hyundai, so you have a hard touch scratchy material here on this area where I would rest my elbow, so not happy about that. This is a padded area right here. It's padded right here where your elbows would rest. The window controls, you can see, they feel pretty good. Only the front windows are one touch up, down, not the rear. Although I will say that compared to other Hyundais, they do feel a little bit more plasticky and don't have quite that satisfying click. Now, getting inside this vehicle, it feels like I'm stepping into more of a hatchback because of that low 6.7 inches of ground clearance, so that's something to keep in mind. My tester has the Harman Kardon stereo with 8 speakers. It sounds pretty decent, especially considering the segment. Now, shutting the door has a relatively solid sounding thunk. This is built off of the older Elantra platform, I believe. Now, getting inside, if you want to start it up, the button is right here, kind of blocked by the steering wheel. But just like on the Kona N that I showed you, you can see the screens have been massively upgraded. You have a fully digital screen here, which is 12 inches, and then you can see there's a 10.3 inch screen or a 10.25 inch screen here. This is the upgraded head unit. It's standard on the Limited, optional on the N-line. An 8-inch screen is standard on the other trims. That screen includes wireless CarPlay and Android Auto. When you go up to the larger screen, Hyundai downgrades that to a wired connection. They're still doing that, and I really want them to just add wireless CarPlay and Android Auto on their bigger screens. It's the same problem that we see with Kias and with Genesis vehicles. Now, looking at the rest of the interior, you can see hard touch plastic everywhere on the dash. Wasn't really expecting it to be soft. However, this right here is slightly padded, but it looks hard and it also feels a little bit cheap, but it is at least a padded material. Hard touch down here, you can see there's single zone automatic climate control. You do have a nice logically laid out center screen here with a volume knob and a tuning knob. The steering wheel, you can see, is leather wrapped. No paddles on the wheel. I believe the N-line model gives that to you. Hyundai also took away the heads-up display that you used to get on the Ultimate version. The steering wheel itself has a manual tilt and telescoping with a good amount of adjustability. It's pretty easy to get a comfortable driving position. The horn, oh my God, it sounds so puny and dinky. I guess it goes with the size of this car. Hate the horn. I would definitely change that out. Over here you can see there's a wireless phone charging pad over here. You have a USB port down there. It's a USB-C along with another USB. So there's 2 USB ports and a 12 volt over here. Your drive mode selector is over here. It's a little dial that you twist. You can see when I start twisting the drive modes, it changes the way the gauge display looks. Really, it only has 2. There's normal, there's sport, and then there's smart. So interesting how the smart mode doesn't like turn green or something like that, but there's no eco mode, which is kind of satisfying. That screen cluster certainly looks nice. You can also kind of change the way that looks by pushing this button here. It'll change the center display. You can show all your kinds of driver assistance information, trip computer, all that stuff. So that's all very, very nice. You can see there's 3-level heated seats over here, but there's an empty button here where a heated steering wheel would have gone. Really annoyed that Hyundai doesn't put a heated steering wheel in this car. I can't remember if the pre-refresh model had it or not. You can see there's your auto start stop defeat button. Put this vehicle into reverse, it gives you a backup camera with parking sensors. No 360 camera, but it's a pretty small vehicle. The graphics and the resolution is fine. This isn't the same. This is the older system that we used to that Hyundai used on all their previous models. I've seen a newer system where they allow you to do a full 360 perimeter scan. This car obviously does not have it. You have an electronic parking brake over here, cup holders, all hard touch plastic down here in the center console area. You have a center lock for the all-wheel drive system, which kind of makes it do a 50-50 torque split if you're stuck in certain conditions. This is padded, but it's not stitched with leather. Open that up, you can see it's a relatively good size center console considering the size of the vehicle. The seats, I also find them to be comfortable and supportive. This is the only trim to get leather. If you guys go for an N-line or the other trims, it'll have cloth seats. The N will have a specific sport cloth seat. Opening up the glove box, you can see it's a bin style. It's not damped or lined with felt, but it is a good size for storage. You have an auto-dimming rearview mirror here, non-LED lighting for the map lights, and then you can see just a standard sunroof, which is standard on the Limited, optional on other trims. You have a nice woven material on the headliner, but overall the cabin is fine. Good tech, good space in here also. I find that the interior room feels good in the front seats. And I also like the new screens, but I'm gonna have to ding Hyundai for taking away the heads-up display and for not offering wireless CarPlay on the larger screen. Looking at the back seat, this is just a refresh, so this back seat has basically been left unchanged. You can see there's about 35 inches of legroom back here, which is on the smaller end. You can see that's where I have the driver's seat to drive for my driving position. It doesn't look like a lot of space. Materials back here are the same as the front, hard touch plastic, soft touch over here, lots of black plastic all over the rear door panel. Now getting inside, you can see once I get back here, 35 inches of legroom is certainly not bad. For somebody my height, there's very good foot space underneath here. There is a hump here that takes up space for the middle passenger. No rear seat air vents, but you do get one USB-A charging port. You have one storage pocket over there. And then you can see the seats, they don't recline, anything like that, or slide forward. They just fold down. And then there's also an armrest here that folds down and gives you 2 cup holders. Obviously no heated rear seats. And in terms of headroom, there is like a cutout area here. So for somebody my height, I actually do find the space to be pretty decent. So overall, it's on the tighter end. I believe something like the Crosstrek and the Corolla Cross gives you a little bit more space, but it certainly is still very usable. So it's been a few years since I drove the regular Hyundai Kona, and even though everybody's been talking about the N, the full performance version of this car, the regular Kona is certainly something you don't want to forget about because Hyundai did add about 20 more horsepower to this Limited and the N-Line trim when you have it equipped with the 1.6 liter turbo. It makes it one of the quickest and most powerful subcompact SUVs in the segment, and I use SUV as a relative term here because this thing with only 6.7 inches of ground clearance doesn't really feel like an SUV, but it is one of Hyundai's top sellers with over 90,000 units sold last year, which has essentially doubled in sales since this car first came out back in 2018. So this is a relatively good vehicle to drive. So let's go ahead and test out what the 0 to 60 performance is in this car. I'm going to turn off the traction control. And with all-wheel drive, it's got no wheel slippage. It doesn't really launch though. But I just got 6.94 seconds, which is actually a pretty decent time. Hyundai doesn't quote a 0 to 60 time, but in this segment, this is fast. Most vehicles in this segment with their CVTs, their naturally aspirated engines, they usually do it in about 8 to 9 seconds. Under 8 seconds is a relatively quick time. So this is definitely fast for the segment. I think the last Subaru Crosstrek I drove with the bigger 2.5 and CVT was about a second slower 0 to 60, and that's the upgraded engine. So this is a pretty good time, but I will notate the dual clutch isn't the smoothest transmission. You're gonna notice that in day-to-day driving. But once you kind of get past that, you're going to appreciate the very nice shove of mid-range torque this engine gives you. And it's definitely powerful. Try it one more time. It doesn't really rev much, 2,000, and then you let go of the brake. I wish this dual clutch had launch control. It could use it. 7.4 seconds here on a more uphill climb. So just over 7 seconds is respectable, but fast for the segment. Respectable in general, but fast for the segment. Now, I'll go ahead and turn the traction control back on. We'll just put the transmission into drive. I'm going to change the drive mode selector into smart because I want to see what this car is like in just a day-to-day feel. Because most people who buy this type of vehicle, they're not going to be launching it like I just do. I just do that for demonstration purposes. But this particular Kona, because it's all-wheel drive, it does have an independent rear suspension. It has a torque vectoring style all-wheel drive system, and the Kona itself has been tuned to be a little bit on a sportier edge. The ride quality on these 18-inch wheels is still actually pretty compliant. The steering in this car is actually pretty quick and reasonable. Not much feel, but Hyundai has been just killing it lately in terms of the driving dynamics portion. Really, what I don't like about this car, and I'm really surprised actually, because Hyundai has been doing a really great job with their dual clutches, improving them over the years. This 7-speed in this car feels like older Hyundai technology. It's an older transmission. It's part of the Eco Shift engine or transmission technology that they introduced on the Veloster, the first generation, over a decade ago. And it is definitely a constant reminder that this is a dual clutch with multiple clutch packs, and it's just lethargic at times. I will put my foot to the floor, and you can literally count to 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi before the transmission finally shifts and it gives you all power. There we go. My foot was to the floor, and it's taking a second. Once it, figures out what it wants to do, lots of mid-range grunt. The engine is relatively refined, if a little buzzy at high RPMs. There are no paddles on the wheel also. This is where this transmission could use paddles on the wheel. There is a manual mode here and a sport mode here, which when you start using the manual mode, it actually does a really good job of rev matching. So I'm pleased there. Even when you start upshifting and downshifting, it's pretty quick, but paddles definitely could be used. I believe the N-Line model gives you the paddles. The Limited doesn't give you the paddles, but it should be included on the Turbo in general. But there were times where I would be making a left turn. I'd be just, trying to merge onto a road, and I have to sit there and wait for the transmission to gather its thoughts. It's really frustrating, and it makes a really pleasant car infuriating to drive at times. But you can feel the torque vectoring all-wheel drive there, sending power to the outside wheel. Definitely on the sportier edge, and that's exactly why the Kona N is just so bloody good. If only Hyundai would have paired the full N with all-wheel drive, because their all-wheel drive system is good. I suspect this all-wheel drive system can't handle the 289 horsepower that the full N version gives you. It's just too much power. It's like almost 100 more horsepower than this car. But I mean, just look at this. Hustling this car on this back road here, it is surprisingly good. It gives you good visibility. The seats are also pretty comfortable. It feels like I'm driving just a taller hot hatch, essentially. This is definitely on the small side, and you feel the lack of girth. You feel the fact that this is light. You feel the fact that it's only 165.6 inches long. Really short overall car. Even for the subcompact class, this is shorter than something like the Crosstrek by like 8 inches. It's even 6.5 inches shorter than the Seltos, this car's platform mate. I am a little bit surprised, however, that Hyundai seems to have decontented this car a little bit compared to the 2021 model. For example, the Kona Ultimate from 2021 had a heads-up display. Now, it was that little plexiglass screen that flipped up, but this car, they've removed the heads-up display. But what you did get is a larger 10.25-inch touchscreen. You have a 12-inch digital cluster over here, which looks good. I suspect Hyundai got rid of the heads-up display because they gave you the full digital cluster here. Although the CarPlay is not wireless, you have to downgrade to the smaller 8-inch screen to get that. It is definitely a nice to have a bigger screen here, and it's relatively quiet in here. I'm surprised, actually, for a subcompact SUV, the road noise is not bad. It's just the engine noise. You feel a little bit of buzziness. The driver assistance tech in this car, Hyundai has also upgraded it to their Highway Driving Assist 2. It has full lane keep assist, full adaptive cruise control, and it works really well. This is a surprisingly tech-focused vehicle. Even though it's been on the market for 4 years, Hyundai's done a good job with keeping it fresh. I just don't know if I can get behind this dual clutch. I found it to be infuriating in my week's worth of testing. And in fuel economy numbers, I've been averaging about 25 mpg in mostly city driving, which is a little bit less than the EPA's number. On the highway, it got around 31 mpg, so decent gas mileage. Regular gas can be put in this vehicle, which is nice. But overall, it's a pleasant car that feels on the sportier edge. I just would like to see Hyundai do an electrified version of this thing. I also would like to see them add all-wheel drive to the N version. But if you just need a regular, quick or subcompact SUV, and you don't necessarily want to cross-trek, this is certainly worth a look, as long as you're okay with the transmission's awkwardness. But for me, I think in this segment, the cross-trek is the best seller, and it's the best seller for the reason. However, I can't discount this car. It has way better tech than the cross-trek. And for some of you, you may also prefer the looks. I actually think I prefer the look of the pre-refreshed model. But overall, solid car. Needs a little bit more tweaking with the transmission, and the interior isn't the most luxurious, but no vehicle in this segment really is either. So with over 90,000 units sold last year in North America, this is one of Hyundai's top-selling vehicles. And since this car has come out in 2018, they've roughly doubled their sales. So this has been a huge success for Hyundai, and it's pretty easy to see why. If you guys are considering a regular sedan like an Elantra, this is a really easy pick because it does give you more practicality versus a sedan. It gives you a slightly higher seating position. It gives you the availability of all-wheel drive, and the interior also got some nice upgrades. I like the larger screen, although I'm still annoyed it's missing wireless Apple CarPlay. And I also don't like how Hyundai took out the heads-up display, which was a unique feature, but they did give us a fully digital instrument cluster to kind of compensate for that. The seats are comfortable, the ride quality is good, the driver assistance tech is good, and also this is an attractive car, especially if you guys go for the N-Line model. That's the one that I personally would choose over the Limited. It gets you basically the same engine, the better looking wheels. The only downgrade you have to make is the materials on the seats. The Limited gives you the leather. The N-Line will give you kind of a sport cloth design, but you'll still get heated seats. But Hyundai did take out the heated steering wheel, which I really wish it had that feature still. But overall, if you guys are looking at this car, it is still a very affordable proposition. This car starts at $21,300. It's about $800 more expensive versus the 2021 model. It does make it about $1,500 cheaper than the Kia Seltos, this car's platform mate, and it also is less expensive versus a Subaru Crosstrek. Also keep in mind, this competes with the new Toyota Corolla Cross, which I should be getting for a week to test very shortly, where I can do another full battery of tests. My tester here being the fully loaded Limited. All-wheel drive is an option. The Limited starts at around $28,900 plus $1,500 extra for all-wheel drive. Add in the destination charge, you're looking at $31,345 for my tester as equipped, which is relatively expensive. However, it's roughly the same price as something like the Subaru Crosstrek that's fully loaded, and the Mazda CX-30 can get this expensive. A Toyota Corolla Cross can also get near $30,000. So it's just the price of a car these days because of all the tech features. It is still significantly less expensive versus the average new car transaction price, obviously. But overall, my gripe has to do with the dual clutch transmission. It just was too lethargic and sleepy for me at times in day-to-day driving. Very quick vehicle, but I do think that the CVT-equipped competitors, as much as I hate CVTs, are the better transmission options just for smoother day-to-day driving. But with all that said, I hope you guys have enjoyed my full overview on the 2022 Hyundai Kona Limited with the 1.6-liter turbo. If you're also looking to see the latest cars I'm testing, be sure to follow me on Instagram at Redline_reviews, like us on Facebook, and as always, guys, please keep subscribing to the Redline Reviews YouTube channel for all the latest reviews. Thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you all in the next video.